Welcome back. Still watching Business Morning live on Channels Television. Now it's commodities market update, and we have Nosika Nwajide, analyst at Financial Derivatives Company, joining us live in the studio. Great to have you on the program. Good morning.
Morning, always my pleasure.
Yeah. So the oil drama continues. We see the United States said it will release millions of barrels of oil, from the SPR in coordination with other consumers to try to cool prices. But it seems the opposite is happening here. We see the prices actually inching up.
Basically, it's one alliance versus another alliance. Historically, we've seen that OPEC and its allies, or OPEC in itself, OPEC is ready to do whatever it takes to stabilize prices. And in particular, Saudi Arabia. I mean, for years, they were a swing producer, cutting output and raising outputs as it suits them to stabilize prices. So while the U.S. has gone ahead to announce that it would pump 50 million barrels of oil into the market, I mean, the market initially was unperturbed. Like, how much impact would that have? Knowing that there's an OPEC meeting next week, OPEC has come out to say that we would not stand still and watch this just happen. We would take drastic action if necessary to stabilize prices. At the moment, OPEC is pumping an extra 400,000 barrels of oil per day into the market. It's possible. It's very possible that it would, if it needs to stop that completely, it's willing to do it. We've seen at the start of the pandemic, it drastically cut outputs just to push oil prices. At the time, oil prices fell to as low as, I know, WTI fell to even below zero. I mean, people think it's impossible. It happened. I mean, so that is, OPEC is coming out to say that, look, between our next, so we expect markets will be flat in the next couple of days until the meeting. Then we expect OPEC to announce either cuts. We'll wait to see the impact of the extra 50 million barrels of oil in a day. There's no detail as to, okay, how much on a daily basis is going to be entering the market. There's no detail as to how much China and India and Japan and the rest of the members of the alliance in the US are going to put into the markets. Obviously, there's Iran. They were looking over their shoulders at Iran and the possibility of a nuclear trade deal with the U.S. in the coming months, and that should put an extra 1 million barrels of oil. So taking all of that into consideration, right, OPEC are likely to either stand still on output or even cut output in the coming weeks.
Is that all OPEC has, as regards retaliation?
As regards the cards it has,
yes,
that's all it can do, and it's very impactful over the years. I mean, OPEC decides that they're going to cut output, prices respond, markets respond.
Okay, looking at these strategic reserves, what are they actually for? Is it for times like these to actually, manipulate price, or what is the use of these SPRs?
The short answer is no. Typically, it's not for times like this. It's for when maybe there's a shock in the global markets and there's scarcity. Typically, so okay, let's guarantee our supply to local consumption, so to speak. But these are extraordinary times. Like as the global economy is recovering from the negative effects of the pandemic. We're seeing that the demand is outpacing supply, not just for oil, not just for energy, but commodities across board. So prices are spiking. Those increasing prices are affecting inflation in advanced economies. U.S. inflation is at a 31-year high. So, and it's bad for politics. The most politically sensitive economic variables are inflation and unemployment. So inflation rising is not a good look for the Biden administration. So it's taking steps, extraordinary steps. We know that the Fed has indicated at a quicker than expected return to monetary policy normalization. So by mid next year, we'll see interest rates start rising. Interest rates start rising, that will curb inflation. For the meantime, you need oil prices to fall to lower what consumers spend on gasoline. So that is the one card it has to play. Initially, it went to OPEC to ask nicely that this 400,000 barrel a day, for extra 400,000 barrel a month increase, could it be ramped up a bit so that prices would trend downwards? And OPEC came out bluntly and said, no, it's not going to happen. We have our own concerns, we have our own problems, we have our own interests, you have yours.
So but looking at this tussle right now. Who do you see actually winning this?
I mean, the U.S. strategic reserve is about 600 million barrels. I'm not sure. It remains unclear how much China have in its strategic reserve, and Japan and all the others. But it's OPEC might just play the waiting game, and you bring out your reserves. We cut down on output and let your oil be in the market. After a while, we'll ramp back up just to stabilize prices. You watch, as any action you take, you watch the market response, and if prices are moving one way, you act to bring it back the other way. So just to stabilize it.
Quite interesting, and I'm sure traders will be, waiting to make profit with all of this volatility. Yes. Anyway, back here we see Melekiari, the GMD of NNPC, has assured that fuel subsidy removal, will definitely be achieved by 2022. We can see fuel prices between 320 naira to about 340 naira per litre. I'm guessing it's time to brace up.
Yes, I mean, that's almost double. That's about double the price that we pay now. So obviously the impact is inflationary. I mean, transport costs will be much higher than they are now. If you spend 5,000 naira to fuel your tank, you probably spend 10. So do you not drive as much as you used to? Do you not go about your daily activities like you used to? That's probably not going to happen.
Even the alternative is expensive.
The alternative is expensive. Do you decide to get on the buses? Nigerians will make some adjustments, as we've always done, but this is here to stay. Subsidies have for long held Nigeria back. They've created so much unimpactful expenses on the part of the government. I mean, if we channeled all that money we spend on subsidies to transport infrastructure, for instance, having rail.
But what is this obsession with subsidy, though?
It's basically a chunk of money that the government spends to keep prices at a certain level, right? I remember sometime early last year when oil prices, during the pandemic, oil prices fell. They fell so low that government actually reduced the price of fuel. Now, the prices have risen to $80 a barrel, and they are spending so much subsidizing it to keep it at 165 naira per litre. So, I mean, if you take it away and the prices go to 340, you pass on the burden of the cost to the people who buy fuel. The poor Nigerians will bear that burden, and it's the beneficiaries of this subsidies have been the richer Nigerians, the people who smuggle, because apparently you have market prices in our neighboring countries. So if you buy at this subsidized price, you can smuggle it across. The incentive is...
So this should actually end.
Yeah, the incentive is way too high. So this should actually end smuggling. It's actually created, because the truth is the Petroleum Industry Act stipulates that subsidies will end. So obviously something that would take time, and early next year, this initially was June 2022, we're hearing that as early as February it could happen. So, and it's something that is welcome as long as the funds are channeled towards more impactful expenditure, especially transport infrastructure.
Yeah, and I spoke to Mr. Eisen about this 5,000 naira grant to cushion the impact of subsidy removal. What's your take on that?
The 40 million most vulnerable Nigerians, obviously.
40 million.
40 million
that's
most
quite expensive. 5,000 naira each. How is it going to get to?
That's the thing. We're not sure. I mean, during the pandemic, we hear that 5,000 naira was distributed to the poorest Nigerians. I'm not sure how many, but right now they've come up with a figure of 40 million Nigerians. This amounts about 2.4 trillion. 2.4 trillion on an annual basis, and the subsidy costs about 250 billion per month now, which comes about 3 trillion. So you have, if you spend that, you have an extra 600 billion left. So as long as the poorest Nigerians, when they bear the brunt of the price increases, just when the price of fuel goes up, commodity prices will rise, transport costs will rise. So if you have an extra 5,000 naira,
but what can 5,000 naira really do?
You'll be shocked for the poorest Nigerians, the 40 million most vulnerable Nigerians. You'll be shocked how much 5,000 naira could go a month. And but like you said, how do we determine who actually got the money?
Who's vulnerable? Am I vulnerable?
These 40 million Nigerians, do they have bank accounts? Are they financially included?
And I hear that the e-naira is supposed to come into play somehow with this.
Well, it'll be obviously be easier to track if you have the e-naira. You'll be easier to know the identities of these 40 million individuals or 40 million households. I'm not sure whether it's households or individuals. Obviously, be individuals. So in one household, you could have more than one person with an extra 5,000 naira a month. So if it's with the e-naira, you could track these deposits and you could track their expenses.
But these are vulnerable we're talking about, though. How do they have access to e-Naira wallets? That's another
That's the
one.
thing. It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell because I know what we heard is during the pandemic, 5,000 naira cash was handed out to Nigerians. So having these people, many of them may not even have phones. And if they have phones, they may not have phones that can have the technology or capability of getting an e-Naira wallet. So these are the issues that need to be sorted out before, hopefully by early next year, whenever they start this 5,000 naira deposits, these issues would have been sorted out.
Okay. Anyway, we see a report from ABS showing that intracity fares jumped 36% in 1 year. What do you make of this? And, you know, higher fares will most likely, you know, stoke inflation. And, you know, with what's coming next year.
Yes. So we already had fares in the last 1 year jump over 30%, but at the same time we've seen that inflation has moderated to 15%. A lot of people may not. It's not adding up to most people.
Yeah, it
because within the cities, every price of every drop from point A to point B has gone up. I mean, I think it's more than 30% if you ask me, more than 30%. Because when prices went up during the pandemic, the prices have not come down. Transport costs have not come down from the time of the pandemic. And going forward, obviously, like you said, would increase the price of fuel, these prices will rise even further. So the impact will be inflationary, comes back to the 5,000 naira a month that will be given to lots of Nigerians to cushion the impact of the higher costs in the coming months or even coming years. And hopefully, as things stabilize, as the economy recovers, as more money is channeled towards more transport infrastructure, you could have real intracity rail that's actually cheaper than taking buses or driving your own cars, and that would impact the lives of people more than actually sharing money.
Right. Okay. Looking at the goodies on your slide, you see World Bank has revised upward Nigeria's growth forecast about 2.7%. Is this in line with expectations?
I mean, I think the revision was based on a faster than expected growth in 2021. We saw Q2 at 5.01, Q3 at 4.03. I mean, that means that it surpassed exceeded all expectations. The outlook was for 2021 was about 2.1 or thereabouts, but the average growth now is over 3%. We exceeded that, and that's on base effects really. But going forward into 2022, obviously we expect reforms to continue. We expect that the subsidy removal will channel more funds into the hands of the government, and hopefully spending is more impactful. It's more impactful to stimulate the economy. There's also 656 billion that was sent to the states, and as they spend that, it's supposed to stimulate aggregate demand, stimulate output, and stimulate the recovery. And as that happens, obviously we might even exceed the 2.8 that was projected. Reforms in the oil sector with the passing of the PIA, if we can sort out electricity, power, become more competitive, will galvanize all the other sectors. There's even if insecurity has weighed down the agri sector, is something that if it's not tackled, it will continue to weigh down the agri sector. It's not something that's going to just fizzle out. So people need to be able to plant, be able to harvest, and be able to get these goods from point A to wherever their farms are to the market, and let the prices, especially food prices, it will help bring down food inflation.
All right, talking about that 656 billion naira, you see it's going to be discounted about 15%.
Okay, yes, yes. There are 30-year notes at 9%, two-year moratorium, and when they when they hit the market, the secondary market will be discounted at 15%, which will put pressure on interest rates. And obviously, we know these TB rates are how the governments borrow, basically. So if you put pressure on interest rates, will lower the cost of borrowing. So it's positive.
Quite a positive.
It's quite a positive.
Okay. Well, let's see. I see the domestic commodity price movement. I see price of gari, rice inching down, flours up, beans up. What's happening there?
Well, the thing is, as we approach Christmas, we expect this was expected. This is the festive season, increased demand for these commodities as people begin to spend and it's Christmas spending basically. If you start, I mean, no one waits till Christmas to actually start shopping for Christmas. So this time of the year, I mean, there's the impact of the harvest season, which has faded off, and there's spending, Christmas-related spending. So that is increasing the price of commodities. Then for imported commodities like the flour and even sugar. Sugar is an alternative. Sugar is a source for ethanol. So ethanol-based sugar is an alternative to oil. So when oil prices rise, there's increased demand for sugar to produce ethanol. So that's impacting the price. So sugar prices are higher. Wheat prices are higher because a major producer like the US, there's some issues around weather conditions. So wheat prices are at a 9-year high at the moment. So we expect floor prices to remain high for the time being.
All right, what's happening with agricultural commodities?
Again, like the onions, rice, a lot of it is seasonality and increased demand that has to do with the Yuletide. So we expect prices to remain elevated going into December and early next year. And
quite an interesting holiday coming. I'm trying hard to get into that holiday spirit, Nosike. I hope you're there.
I will get there eventually.
All right, Nosike Wajide, analyst, financial derivatives company. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Another time this week. Thank you so much.
Always my pleasure.
All right, we'll take a moment now. Business Morning returns in a moment.